to northern England, western fringes of Wales and later the West Country. But much of England and Wales starting the day dry with plenty of sunshine. As we head through the day, this weather front just slowly pushes a little further south and eastwards, clearing Northern Ireland, brightening skies here. A few showers also for northern and western parts of Scotland, but the rain remains across southern Scotland, northern England, Wales, down into the West Country. Here quite cool and breezy. To the southeast of this, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching 25, 26 Celsius. Fresher behind it, temperatures generally the high teens. Through into the evening time on Tuesday, this weather front just stalls and stays across parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, northern England. Further heavy bursts possible. And then over the next few days, well, temperatures peak on Wednesday around 29 Celsius and then cooling as we end the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M90 continues to crawl, heading south through Fife. Junction 3 to 2 near Dunfermline. Everybody's been squeezed into the inside lane on that two-lane stretch past the scene of an accident. Meanwhile, in Rutland, the A1 is partly blocked southbound at the Stretton exit as you head towards Stamford, towards Lincolnshire at the scene of a collision. And the M4 in Berkshire, that's down to 2 lanes eastbound at Junction 7 near Slough, following an accident. On the Kent stretch of the M25, the anti-clockwise exit is partly blocked to Junction 1A south of the Dartford tunnels, where a car's broken down. Various road closures still in place in West London through Notting Hill and North Kensington of the second and final day of the Notting Hill Carnival, with Ladbroke Grove and Notting Hill Carnival stations closed, and still no Elizabeth line trains out of Bond Street to the Heathrow terminals and Reading. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Emily Carver. I'm standing in for Michelle Dewberry this bank holiday Monday evening. Now, the Prime Minister, he's accused of blatant hypocrisy as the Labour sleaze row rumbles on. He's now under pressure to reveal who exactly authorised a Downing Street pass to a millionaire donor. The very same man who promised voters a total crackdown on cronyism. Is there a little bit of hypocrisy here? And up to 1 million people take to the streets of West London London for day 2 of the famous Notting Hill Carnival. But whilst the supposed family day has left a woman fighting for her life in hospital, we're asking, is it time for a little rethink? And following the horrific stabbings in Solingen, Germany last week by a suspected Syrian asylum seeker, the German Chancellor has vowed to get tough on weapons laws and deportation rules should the UK follow suit. And teachers, they'll be trained to challenge whiteness in schools. Do teachers really need to be taught how to disrupt the centrality of whiteness, quotes, in schools? Well, that's just a selection of things we're going to be discussing this evening with my wonderful panel, Mark Littlewood and Matthew Stadlin. But first, let's get the latest news headlines.
Emily, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Italian lawyer Nancy Dell'Olio has paid tribute to her ex-husband and former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson after he died at the age of 76. Nancy says, "I choose to remember the good times we shared and the moments that brought joy to our lives." The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica and Roma. Eriksson had pancreatic cancer and at the beginning of this year he revealed he only had a year to live at best. Well, his former England captain David Beckham posted an emotional tribute on social media. He said, "We laughed, we cried and we knew we were saying goodbye. Sven, thank you for always being the person you've always been, passionate, caring, calm and a true gentleman. Thank you, Sven, and in your last words to me, it will be okay." The Prime Minister has said he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football, which brought joy to so many over the years. And FA President Prince William's also paid respects on X, saying, "I met him several times and was always struck by his charisma and passion for the game." He says, "My thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game." Former England player Danny Mills told GB News he was one of a kind.
I don't remember Sven ever raising his voice, let alone shouting. He was very much in the Arsene Wenger mould of management, spoke very, very softly. His football knowledge was absolutely incredible.
Residents of an East London block of flats engulfed by what they call a nightmare fire say they've lost everything. Everyone's been accounted for after a major incident was declared following the fire in Dagenham. Over 80 people were evacuated from the building, with 2 people being taken to hospital. There have been no reported injuries. London Fire Commissioner Andy Rowe says a full investigation into the fire and its cause will now get underway, and he says there will undoubtedly be concerns around the fire safety issues present within the building, and this will form part of our report. A British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying at in Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death and they're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. That strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One remains in a serious condition. This morning, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz laid flowers at a memorial site where 3 people were killed and 8 others injured in a stabbing on Friday. The 26-year-old behind the attack in Western Germany has been named as Issa al-H. That was after he gave himself up to the police. The Syrian national is now being investigated by German federal prosecutors for links to the Islamic State terror group. Italian prosecutors have placed the captain of the super yacht which sank off the coast of Sicily last week under investigation. It's been reported that James Cutfield, a 51-year-old New Zealand national, is being investigated for manslaughter and shipwreck. The vessel sinking led to the deaths of British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, his 18-year-old daughter Hannah and 5 others. A senior Metropolitan Police officer says he's tired of saying the same words every year. That's after a woman attending the Notting Hill Carnival with her child was stabbed. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at this annual event. And that 32-year-old mother is in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 police officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day of the event. A heavy police presence is in place today as the main parade continues to pass through the streets of West London. And the world's oldest man turns 112 today. John Tinnerswood was born in Liverpool on this day in 1912 and says the secret to his long life is just luck. Asked how he feels to be turning 112, he told Guinness World Records, in all honesty, no different. He said, I don't feel that age, I don't get excited over it, and that's probably why I've reached it. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
OK, welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Emily Carver. I'm in for Michelle tonight. Now, joining me until 7 is my panel, Mark Littlewood, Director of the Popular Conservatives. Thank you for joining us. And Matthew Stadlen, political commentator. Now, please do get your views in throughout the show, gbnews.com/your say. I'm going to get to lots of them this evening because I want to know your view on all the topics we're going to be discussing. Now, we are going to get on to Notting Hill Carnival in a little bit. And Matthew, you've been enjoying the festivities yourself, haven't you?
Have we always seem to get on to Notting Hill Carnival at this time of the year?
Well, it is the time.
On GB News.
Well, it is today. I mean, if we don't talk about it, then, you know, when are we going to talk about it? Next week?
Are we celebrating?
Well, we're going to get into a discussion about whether some things have gone wrong, some things have gone well. But we're going to start with the Labour Party, the Labour government. You may remember when Sir Keir Starmer asked you to vote for him, he promised this.
To change Britain, we must change ourselves. We need to clean up politics. No more VIP fast lanes, no more kickbacks for colleagues, no more revolving doors between government and the companies they regulate. I will restore standards in public life with a total crackdown on cronyism.
A total crackdown on cronyism. That's what he promised back in January. However, only 50-odd days into his premiership, he now stands accused of hypocrisy, failing to live up to the very standards he has set for himself, his party and the whole of government. So you've got the appointment of donors and Labour advisors to key civil service roles. This is supposedly a political civil service. You've also got Wahid Ali, a long-time Labour donor who's donated over £500,000 to the party. And get this, £16,000 specifically for a new wardrobe for Keir Starmer. Well, it turns out he was given a number 10 security pass, allowing him easier access to the building. Now, for what reason exactly remains unclear, but it seems it's all OK because Starmer is going to tell us tomorrow that things will get better. But they have to get worse first. Apparently, that is the message that will be delivered tomorrow. So is the honeymoon period, I guess, officially over for Sir Keir? Mark, how much should we make of this sleaze scandal, these allegations against the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I'm not too bothered about the civil service appointments because, to be honest with you, I'd politicise the civil service. I think you should be able to appoint people as your policy advisors that you know, respect, like, who are on the page with you and the rest of it. This chap, however, who's given £500,000 to the Labour Party, who's got a security pass, this is pretty strange, isn't it? And we were told by Pat McFadden that this is not unusual at all. Well, why has he handed the pass back?
Well,
I mean, what did he need it for in July? I think there's some suggestion he organised some garden party or something. I want to hear a lot more from the Labour Party about this because they could not have been on a higher horse when the Conservatives were in power on this sort of stuff. This would be the sort of stuff that Angela Rayner would have gone absolutely hectic about. So I at least want an explanation. Very strange to give a major donor with no official role a pass to number 10 Downing Street.
Matthew?
Well, I'm not here in a capacity for the government defending the government, right or wrong. If anything wrong has been done, then I will join everyone else in condemning it. So we may need to hear a bit more from Keir Starmer. But let's not forget that Lord Ali is a peer. So he is a Labour peer. He is himself a political figure. Yes,
but cabinet ministers don't have these passes.
That's true, but you are allowed to have political figures who are close to you when you are in government, and you are allowed to give them access. Now, clearly, he has also given money in the past, and that's why questions are being asked. But I'm not sure at this point that I would use the word sleaze to describe the arrangement.
What about, what do you make of the fact that he took £16,000 or so for clothes? It's almost like he's sort of sponging off him. Doesn't he have enough money to buy his own clothes? It's a bit odd, isn't it?
Those sorts of things make me feel a little bit awkward. I mean, I buy my own ties, but they're usually quite cheap unless my wife has bought them. So, look, it isn't a wonderful look, is it? Let's put it like that.
What do you make of that?
I don't mind.
Do you think it's fine? 16 grand for a new wardrobe,
Yes,
Keir Starmer out with his begging bowl?
I'm going to be honest, yes, I do. I mean, when the Conservatives were in office, I often defended them against this sort of stuff. I don't have any problem with a rich man, giving a large amount of money to the Labour Party.
But what's he wanting in return?
Well, I don't know, but the idea that we don't want affluent people to donate to politics, I think, would be wrong-headed indeed.
For shoes, glasses...
Yeah, well, he was on... Keir
suits.
Starmer was on the campaign trail for weeks and weeks.
But he calls himself a socialist.
He needs to have decent suits, decent clothes.
I do admire your consistency, and it's funny that we're starting...
He is consistent, Mark.
It's funny to find ourselves on potentially slightly opposite sides of this debate, but there's no wrongdoing here, so we should be clear about that. And we know that the Tories have major donors, really seriously wealthy donors, and there have been question marks in the past about some of those donors. And no, I would say they've got more major donors historically. But for me, and I voted Labour, I'm broadly supportive of this Labour government, but as we may see throughout the programme, I'll criticise them where I think they should be criticised. For me, the idea that the leader of the Labour Party, somebody who then becomes Prime Minister, is given money specifically for his clothes by a major donor, for me, I find it uncomfortable. It's not wrong, but I think actually your word there, it's a bit weird.
You may be consistent in your argument here, but is it consistent of Sir Keir Starmer, who is a self-proclaimed socialist?
It's not obviously the personal practice of socialism, is it, to take £16,000 from a multi-millionaire to tart up your wardrobe? Not obviously, not obviously the greatest exemplification of socialism. So I was defending Keir Starmer's actual activity from a completely non-socialist perspective. I think if Sir Keir Starmer wants to be and profess to be a socialist, he should probably be somewhat more hair-shirted.
It is all rather bizarre. But I will take you up on the your sort of blasé response to the civil service appointments, because we don't live in a country where no one admits that we've got a politicised civil service, so therefore surely appointments should at least appear apolitical.
I suppose that's right within the present system, but I think that system is now breaking down. Since Blair brought in special advisors, you've now almost got a parallel civil service.
They are distinct, though.
They are distinct, but I just think that we should confess that people at the higher echelons of the civil service, probably permanent secretaries, director generals and directors, who have a major role in policy making and advise on that, I think should be political appointments.
But I just think we should be clear about a couple of these. Why I think an impartial civil service does matter, and this is where I disagree with you, Mark, is because an incoming government has to be able to rely on the civil service to advise it impartially and to do its bidding effectively. Now, this hasn't happened, but were Labour just to pack the civil service, we're talking about 2 or 3 cases potentially here, but were Labour to pack the civil service with its own supporters, that would obviously make it very difficult for an incoming Tory government in 5 years' time, if that is what occurs. Do I feel uncomfortable with the idea that Labour were given a lot of money by some people, and then when they get into power, they appoint them to public offices that should be held not just impartially, but I think should be open to the general population to apply from? Yes, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable about it, but I'm not sure that any rules have been broken.
And I'm not so sure. I think we should give up on believing the impartiality of the civil service. I mean, I'm not saying they're bent or crooked necessarily, but they come to the table with their own opinions.
We're all human beings.
No, of course, they're all human beings. And listen, Matt, I agree with you that you know, I'm not suggesting that it would be a wise decision for the government to come in and just say, great, we've got 400 slots, let's just pack it full of our cronies. Who paid for your wardrobe? Let's appoint him. That clearly shouldn't be the way you do it. But you want political allies and you want expertise. You should bring in people who are expert.
That's where the special advisors come in, isn't it?
Well, the special advisors are more about handling political communications and the press releases and the political side.
I have to say, as someone who worked for the BBC for nearly 9 years, quite a while ago now, Clearly, I went into the BBC with my own personal political views, and I emerged from the BBC with my own personal political views. But I can say hand on heart that I did everything in my power for those 9 years, and I worked at the heart of live political programmes where there's an extra premium on you being impartial. Hand on heart, I don't think I ever did a single thing that was linked to my personal views.
What about choice of stories? See, it comes down to the nitty-gritty. Choice of stories, choice of angles.
You're right.
Choice of
or is it even
guests.
subconscious?
Subconscious.
Look, we are human beings. We have subconscious. But I've examined myself, looked back, and I say, hand on heart, that I did everything in my power to be impartial. And I think I did it very well. And my loyalty...
Did your views change while you were at the BBC?
I think I had less of a sense of outrage because I was paid to try to bring in people from different sides.
I have a massive sense of outrage every time I switch on the BBC, so quite a difference. I think the difference is you were working for a broadcaster that has obligations to be impartial. A government is by its nature political. It will have a view of what economic models are true and which are false, what needs to be done in a particular area, what a priority is. The government by its nature is political, not impartial. And it should be able to seek its own expertise and advice at the discretion of the Prime Minister.
If you follow this through logically, if every time we have a change of government, and under the Tories that happened quite regularly recently, or a new administration at least, and if we were to have, I don't know, a Tory government, as I've said, in 5 years' time, 4 years' time, if you had to flush out the entire civil service...
Not the entire civil service.
Well, hang on, but that would be the logical conclusion. No. Thousands of people. If it is said to be partial rather than impartial, if you fill it with your party political allies...
It would probably be a lot smaller in your world.
I mean, I'm just saying the permanent secretaries, the director-generals and the directors, I mean, the person working in accounts, filling in an Excel spreadsheet doesn't...
Well, why not? Well, they could do all sorts of things, theoretically, to stand in the way of the government.
If you're sabotaging the government, you should be fired. But if you are in a senior...
that's the allegation, that the current civil service does try to sabotage the government.
If you are in a senior role, advising on policy, that, in my view, is a political role.
So change it all.
It's about the top 1,000 or so.
That's a lot of jobs to fill for an incoming administration.
Well, I mean, everywhere else in the Western world seems to manage it. I don't see why we can't.
Well, that's some food for thought. I wonder what people at home make of that discussion, whether we should just be a bit more open and honest about
but you say honest.
Political...
The suggestion is that it is partial, and I think that's unfair. I'm only giving you I can only speak from my own personal experience.
There's a lot of people who've come out, you know, whistleblowers from the Home Office in particular, over the last months and years, and said that there is a complete divide between what the mass of people working in the Home Office believe about policies like Rwanda and other policies related to immigration and border control in particular, and what the government at the time was trying to push through. And that's... I don't think you can just explain that away or say, oh, no, that doesn't show any partiality or anything like that, because I think it's clear that there is a level of that. And also with Brexit and things like that, were the mass of the civil service behind that?
Did 52% of the civil service vote for Brexit, do you think?
I couldn't tell you. Because
I think it's very unlikely, don't you?
Why do you think it's unlikely? We've got to be careful with assertions here. You don't want to assert something as if it is fact, because there have been some whistleblowers.
Well, none of us have the survey data of every civil servant,
no, but we have to be careful of doing that, because it's perfectly possible that thousands of civil servants hold personal political views, because almost everybody does, but that they are professional in the way that they do their job. But we've got to be careful not to trash it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also, you know, a lot of people working very intelligent, very hard-working, and they don't want to all be, you know, spoken about in that way. But lots of people getting in touch. Joe says, two-tier Keir has more faces than a town hall clock. OK. Craig says, one word to sum up Keir Starmer, hypocrite. Jane says, this is making a mountain out of a molehill. Just as I said with Partygate for Boris, this is political point scoring from the media. There may be some truth to that. And Samantha says, why do politicians need a salary? Free this, subsidise that. And Jerry says he should have gone to Specsavers for the glasses. So there you go. A range of views. We're going to move on. Keep your views coming in, because coming up, a woman has been left in a critical condition after being stabbed on the Family Day at Notting Hill Carnival yesterday. We're going to have a little look at this event and ask whether it's time to rethink the way it's run, because clearly there's quite a bit of violence and quite a bit of crime. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back in a tick.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Paul Spires is a much-loved part of this South London community.
When I first got here, it was so quiet, and after 3 months, I decided to buy myself a speaker. I started playing music. Everyone loved it.
So when 200 residents from Beckenham chipped in more than £3,000 to send a sweeper on a summer break to Portugal, it was a moment of great local spirit.
I'm overwhelmed with it. I'm just here to do a job to best of my ability, and the way they've reacted is brilliant.
Lisa Knight, an estate agent, said she started the campaign after becoming friends with Mr Spears.
Last Monday, I bumped into him after work. It was a 30-degree day and he'd been working all day. So we stood and had a chat like we often do. And he explained to me that it was his birthday on Tuesday and he wanted to save up to go to Portugal because he's only ever been abroad once for his 60th birthday. And after he left, I decided to make the GoFundMe. So we shared it on the local Beckenham Appreciation Group on Facebook, which is huge, and it just flew away.
But Mr Spears was unable to take the trip due to his employer's rules on accepting gifts. A solution appeared when a travel company spotted an opportunity to help out.
onthebeach.com had an amazing idea to run a competition whereby Paul would be the winner. He had to be aged between the age of 62 and 64, be loved in Beckenham, have the surname Spears and love Elvis, and so he still gets to go on holiday.
Viola have matched that £3,000 to donated to who I have wanted nominated, and obviously cancer research, which they've already done.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Right, this is Dewbs & Co with me, Emily Carver. I'm standing in for Michelle, and keeping me company is Mark Littlewood, director of the Popular Conservatives, and Matthew Stadlin, political commentator. Now, we are going to get on to Notting Hill Carnival because we've got a lot to say on that. But first, I forgot to ask your thoughts on this big speech that Keir Starmer's going to give tomorrow. Now, he, Matthew, is going to tell us all that things will get worse before they get better. Is that a strong, persuasive statement to make to the country?
I mean, it's not overly optimistic, is it? But there is probably a hint of realism. I'm surprised he's due to say that they'll get worse before they get better. But we know that things, and this is partly the fault of the Tory governments that we've had over the last 14 years. It's partly as a consequence of the Ukraine war and other external issues. But things are in a pretty parlous state. I think everybody watching tonight will agree that the NHS is seriously struggling. I think everybody watching tonight will agree that our social care system is seriously struggling. I think everybody watching tonight will be horrified that the prisons are 99% full or whatever they are, and that the government seems to have no choice but to let some criminals out sooner than they otherwise would. These are systemic failures, and they are, of course, going to take time to remedy.
Mark, what do you think he means when he says things will get worse?
Well, that all of this, we've got to have much more growth in the economy. He's basically admitting this will happen no time soon. I mean, for what it's worth, I half agree with Keir Starmer. I think things will get worse, but I don't think they'll ever get better. So I think he's about half right. But the problem is this, and I would blame the Tories for some of this. We have taxes at the highest rate since the Second World War, and the Labour Party is going to put these up. We have
some of them.
Well, the total tax burden will rise. We have the highest state spending ever I mean, to remarkably little effect. I mean, huge increases in state spending, and that's going to go higher still. And we have more and more regulation. I mean, barely a day or a week goes by without some new regulation being passed. And if we continue on that trend, which I fear we were on to some degree under the Conservatives, I expect things will get worse and continue to get worse.
Mark, you say we've got more and more regulations. Something that Labour will say in their defence is that they are trying to slash regulation when it comes to house building, and they see house building as central to growth. And I think you would agree with me that we simply have not been building nearly enough houses year after year after year, and not just the Tories, but you can go back to the last Labour government probably as well.
Two cheers for that, definitely. Our planning system is completely broken. If Labour can fix that, great. And it might be the case, I'm not holding out much hope, that sometimes you can only really reform things that you're more trusted on as a party. I hope the National Health Service is, we start to admit it for the disastrous system it is, and look over the channel to Western Europe and see what we can learn from the Dutch system and the Belgian system.
I can tell you, having just interviewed Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary at the Edinburgh Fringe, he's absolutely committed to being free at the point of delivery.
Well, that's
free
right.
at the point of use.
That's true everywhere in Western Europe.
OK. But there are variations, though, aren't there? I think it's fair to say. And he, I think, is prepared to use the private sector, you know, to unlock some of the backlog that people at home and some of us have been experiencing when it comes to the waiting list.
I worry it's going to be an uphill battle. Yes, people argue that it's difficult for the Conservatives to make any real reform with our health service because of, you know, all the baggage that's attached to the Tories doing anything with the word private in. But I think there's baggage on the Labour side too. The unions aren't going to be very happy with it. They've got the junior doctors, the BMA, the various other health unions who will have something to say, I'm sure. But shall we move on? Because it is day 2 of Notting Hill Carnival. 1 million people or so expected to descend on West London. They'll probably be there right now to take part in the cultural celebrations, vibrant colours and music. But the problem is, every year it does seem to be plagued by crime. Now, 3 people were known to be stabbed yesterday. A 32-year-old left in a life-threatening condition, and there were more than 90 arrests. And it was meant to be the family day yesterday. So I guess the question is the Notting Hill Carnival worth it? Does something need to change? Is it a good use of police resources, for example? I read that 7,000 police officers are down at this one event. I mean, what about the rest of London? I mean, Matthew, why don't we show a little an image of your walk to work today?
Literally was my walk to work.
Oh, that was short.
And there were moments when I thought I wasn't going to make it. In the end, I was an hour early because I did give myself an extra bit of time. I am unashamedly a supporter of the Notting Hill Carnival. I'm born and bred in Notting Hill. I still live in Notting Hill. I live at the heart of it. Yes, my priorities have slightly changed now that I'm a family man and I've been sent back to London by my wife, who escapes it. She's from the South Coast, in order to keep an eye on the house. And yes, of course, that brings a little...
Your wife doesn't like it.
No, she's not a huge fan. But that does bring its own stresses. But look, this is a celebration of multiculturalism. It's a celebration of Caribbean traditions. It's a recognition...
Matthew,
let me quickly say, it's a recognition of the huge input that immigrants from the Caribbean have made to this country. And yes, there is crime. And of course, as a potential victim of crime, I utterly condemn it. And of course, the police should make arrests. And that case of that young mother is absolutely horrifying. 1 million people or so are having a wonderful time. We don't shut down football because we know there's violence there week in, week out. We don't shut down the London transport system because we know horrifying attacks take place on the London transport system.
Is there a compromise to be had, though? Because clearly you don't have any issue with this event, even though it's disruptive to your life.
I don't like the crime. I don't like the crime.
You don't like the crime. You know,
we don't shut down Glastonbury because it's riddled with drugs.
No, every business but that's in a contained area, isn't it, Glastonbury? And that's the issue. That's the issue for me. Now, I understand this carnival has a long history. It was, it was started against racism and everything like that, and it's supposed to be a celebration. But when you've got older residents having to leave the area for the entire weekend.
People who buy into Notting Hill know that there is a carnival. Everyone knows it's going to happen.
You've got every business boarded up. You've got houses, people urinating, etc., etc. I mean, Mark, what's the answer? How can we have this nice Notting Hill carnival but without the crime that goes with it?
Well, listen, I've got some sympathy with May. If you put 1 million people together, you're going to get some crime.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of low-level crime, and you're going to get occasional high-level and extremely unpleasant crime. Here's my solution, though. Matt says, you know, we don't close down football because you get trouble at football matches. Indeed, we don't. I'm very glad about that. I'm a fanatical football supporter.
Watford?
Southampton. I was there for a dire game on Saturday.
1-0
Southampton lost to Nottingham Forest at home. But here's the rub. Football clubs pay for the policing for these matches. They pay for it. It's not at the taxpayer's expense. I don't know who the organising authority are around Notting Hill Carnival. I think the policing operation costs about 12 million quid. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm a live and let live kind of guy. But the people who participate in it and organise it should pay for the policing of it, just as Southampton Football Club contribute to the policing at Southampton matches, and that goes straight onto the top of my season ticket. I can tell you now that
the organisers of Notting Hill Carnival will not be able to afford this £12 million price tag that you put on it. It may be that the council, Kensington and Chelsea Council, it may be that they contribute to it. But if you think about the reputational advantages for not just our capital city, but for the country, that we have the second biggest street party in the world, second only to Rio. This is a wonderful celebration.
Same case could be made for football.
This is a wonderful celebration.
Yeah, we're the home of football.
That happens once or twice every week, multiple times right across the country. I don't think that would be
fantastic for the economy.
I mean, let's admit it, a lot of residents will absolutely dread it every year. Because of the disruption and because of the loitering and the bad behaviour.
I've always been one who gets involved, gets stuck in.
Well, Matthew, you're a very particular type of guy, Matthew.
What sort of guy am I? A fun-loving guy. Get out and do a bit of dancing.
I'm intrigued to know what level of crime would make you think, actually, you know, maybe this should become a ticketed event, or maybe it should move to a park or something, or
I mean, do you realise how out of touch you are with the millions of people who come to the
I'm not trying to ban the thing.
But you can't
I'm not trying to ban the thing. I know a lot of people really enjoy it, and it's something to look forward to. It's the last bank holiday of the summer. But something's going wrong here. You've got the police coming out and saying this has been marred by unacceptable violence.
They've also said that the vast majority of people go there to enjoy themselves.
Yes, of course.
Matt, you can't have it both ways round. Either this is a massive, hugely popular event that millions of people want to go to. Well, OK, chip in 2 or 3 quid towards the police.
Destroy the very essence of it.
The very essence of it is I pay for it, is it? That's the essence of it. The people who don't go pay for it. That's the essence of it. If it's that popular, you should not struggle to finance the policing.
Ticketing a street party.
We just don't need to ticket it. You just need to raise the money. Crowdfund it.
Part of the joy of it and the charm of it is that it is a street party.
That's great. I'm not changing that.
And you don't get people who turn up for a street party to pay. I don't know what your sort of parties are like. Do you get people to pay for your birthday parties? Come on, this is just absurd.
There are very few stabbings at my birthday parties. I've never needed 7,000 police officers at my birthday party. I've never needed any police officers at my birthday party.
One issue is that it's very, very difficult to police, and the police have to pick and choose what they pick up on, because if they, went in heavy-handed and arrested someone for taking Class A drugs, or it could cause a real issue. It could all kick off. So it is very difficult.
It is difficult, and some.
But it's worth it for you.
Some police officers will not enjoy it. It's a tricky thing to plan the policing of. But personally, this is anecdotally, I've been very impressed with how it's been policed. I've spent quite a bit of time at the Carnival this weekend. There are police almost everywhere to reassure you. Not absolutely everywhere, but almost everywhere. On a street corner, in the middle of the street sometimes. It has been well done. And, of course, they're not going to arrest every single person who takes Class B or C drugs or whatever. I've never touched a drug in my life.
Did you dress up, or did you just go and have a look?
This time... Oh, sorry, I've just been touched my microphone. But this time I had to come through in my sort of suit and tie.
Oh, no.
And I did get a few questions, like, what are you selling us, Matt? That sort of thing. But no, let's not be killjoys.
You need police protection.
I am a Notting Hill resident. I'm telling you, I'm deeply proud of the Carnival and the fact that it sends a message across the world that we are a multicultural society and we're capable of having fun in the streets.
That's all good. Live and let live, but don't ask the rest of us to pay for it.
OK, well, I'm going to get some of your views. You've got mixed views, actually, on this one. Some of you thinking, you know, it's a good fun. Others of you thinking it's a recipe for disaster and should be moved to a supervised entry metal detector closed event. But we'll get some of those after the break, because coming up, as Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Germany pledges tougher weapon laws and deportation rules following Friday's stabbing attack in Solingen, Germany, we'll be debating, should the UK follow suit?
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather forecast for GB News from the Met Office. Northwest, southeast split developing with our weather. Wet and windy weather pushing in from the Atlantic across the north and the west, but turning quite warm as high pressure holds on across southeastern parts of the UK. And you can see this weather front moving in through Monday evening, overnight into Tuesday, bringing some wet and windy weather. In fact, cloud and rain increasing already across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland pushing north and eastwards. The rain turning particularly heavy as we head into the early hours, and Met Office warning across southwest Scotland for some heavy bursts of rain, some travel disruption first thing Tuesday morning. Elsewhere, generally dry with some clear spells, winds coming up from the south, so no problems with temperatures. So wet start across Scotland on Tuesday morning, outbreaks of heavy rain in places. There'll be some tricky travelling conditions, some brisk winds around the coast and over the hills as well, temperatures around the mid-teens. Cloudy and wet across parts of Northern Ireland as well, but the heaviest of the rain here starting to clear. Heavy rain across Cumbria through the morning, brighter further south and east. Wales generally dry, but rain soon approaching from the west, and the rest of England dry and bright to start Tuesday morning with some hazy sunshine. Through the day, this weather front only slowly pushes a little further south and eastward, so rain continuing across southern Scotland, northern England, pushing into parts of Wales and perhaps the West Country at times too. Bright skies following behind across Northern Ireland, Scotland, fresh here. Ahead of it though, dry, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching around 25, 26 Celsius. On Wednesday, this weather front still across central and western parts of England and Wales, though starting to fizzle out. Warm and sunny ahead of this. Further showers and rain pushing across Northern Ireland and Scotland, rather fresh here. And temperatures in that sunshine in the southeast reaching around 28, 29 Celsius. Settling down by the end of the week, temperatures a little lower. See you soon.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems in Staffordshire, a few miles west of Dudley tonight. The A449 is blocked along the Stourbridge Road through Himley at the scene of an accident. And in Rutland, very near the Lincolnshire border, a few miles north of Stamford, the A1 is partly blocked southbound on the Great North Road at the Stretton exit by collision. It's taking about 20 minutes to get through. In southwest London, Battersea Park Road is blocked eastbound at Battersea at Macduff Road. Emergency services are dealing with an incident. And of course, in West London, various closures remain in place through Notting Hill, North Kensington and Westbourne Green as the second and final day of the Notting Hill Carnival continues. It does mean that Ladbroke Grove and Notting Hill Carnival stations are shut, and Elizabeth Line trains remain suspended out of Bond Street to Heathrow Airport and Reading after an object got caught on the overhead line. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Right, OK, welcome back. This is Jews & Co. I have Mark Littlewood and Matthew Stadlin with me this evening. Just on Notting Hill Carnival before we move on, Shirley says, just contain it. Tickets for families taking part and no one else. Apparently that might ruin the vibe of the street party. Christine says, nobody's against the celebration, but we must consider safety, including that of the police. Why not have it in a park?
Well, that's going to make it safe, isn't it? I mean, have you heard of what happens in Hyde Park, for example? You don't need a carnival to have stabbings in Hyde Park. This is a great celebration, and yes, there are idiots and really bad people who do bad things at the carnival, as there are throughout the year in all sorts of different contexts. This has been going on, as you said at the beginning, for decade after decade. It's been going on for longer than I've been alive, and I think we should celebrate it.
And it has to stay exactly the same.
Where there is serious crime, crack down on it.
Yeah, OK, I just wonder if the police are capable of policing such a massive event without, you know, a 32-year-old woman being stabbed and left in a
impossible, sadly. Impossible.
Condition.
And it's extremely sad. I'm the husband of a young woman myself, and she's a young mother, and I mean...
And presumably police resources are being diverted from elsewhere in London.
Well, that's my concern.
Right?
That is my concern.
So there are a few... If you're not going to the Notting Hill Carnival, you've got less police protection over this weekend than you would normally expect. Is that right?
That would be logically the consequence, or maybe not just from London, but from other parts of the country. It isn't perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect, but there are some traditions and some celebrations that are worth protecting, and I strongly think that this is one of them. And I think the vast majority of people you ask would agree with me.
It should be easy to raise 12 million quid then to pay for the policing.
You're not seriously going to stand on the edge of Notting Hill Carnival and start asking people to show their tickets? This is not a Taylor Swift concert. This is a carnival. There's supposed to be a degree of spontaneity to it.
As we've seen, there were stabbings at Notting Hill Carnival, but we're going to turn our attention to a stabbing attack in Germany, which was on Friday at a festival, which I don't believe was ticketed either. And this, the German Chancellor has responded. He's Olaf Scholz, and he's pledged tougher weapons laws and swifter enforcement of deportation rules. Now, of course, the mass stabbing happened in the western city of Solingen on Friday night, and it left a woman and 2 men dead. The suspect is a Syrian asylum seeker called Issa al-Age. So it's a very tricky one. In this country, Olaf Scholz obviously has to come out. He's got elections coming up. He needs to come out with something strong and say, you know what, I will protect the public from these types of random terror attacks that we do see.
It wasn't random, it was planned by ISIS.
No, but as in, this is the ISIS handbook to tell people in the West who are their followers to just pick up a weapon or, you know, get into a vehicle and just try and kill as many people as you can. I mean, Olaf Scholz, cracking down on weapons, is that going to solve it? Will deportation rules solve it?
I'm a bit sceptical about weapons crackdowns in Europe. I mean, if you are determined to get your hands on a knife, you will be able to get your hands on a knife. OK, you might say that, you know, some knives are more dangerous than others, but we're not going to be able to prevent people getting their hands on that sort of weaponry. It's not like the United States where you can go and buy a machine gun easily in some sort of states. So I'm a bit sceptical of that. I understand politicians want to, you know, something must be done, this is something, let's do this. It seems to me on the face of it, I don't claim to be an expert on the German legal system, but they have a similar problem to that we have in the United Kingdom. And it maddens me that we are not able to process asylum applications with anything approaching rapidity. It takes 18 months on average from considering a claim to determining it. I'm not saying you can do it in 18 hours, but I think you probably should be able to do it in 18 days.
But that's not necessarily the issue, is it? The speed of the asylum claim.
I think it should also be the nature of
it.
Well, I think it should also be the nature of it. So I think if you are seeking asylum in Germany or the UK, and it's up to the Germans what they want their rules to be, there are certain things that we would seek for you to undertake. We would need to be satisfied that you weren't a terrorist, that you supported freedom of speech and freedom of expression, even if you found some of the statements made blasphemous, that was not a cause or a case for you to turn to violence. So I think there needs to be a whole load of checks here. And the entire system in the UK seems to be broken on this, as far as I'm concerned. And sadly and tragically, it seems to be pretty similar in Germany and many other European countries as well.
Yes, so Matthew, according to reports, this man, 26 years old, he arrived in Germany in 2022. He applied for asylum. His application was later rejected. He was supposed to be deported to Bulgaria because that was the first country within the European Union that he'd registered as an asylum seeker. Clearly something's gone very, very wrong. But we've had the same problem in this country multiple occasions. Abdullah Zaidi, for one, that horrific chemical attack in London. He'd had his asylum refused twice. Another man who killed 21-year-old Thomas Roberts, he'd also arrived here and he was a failed asylum seeker, yet he was still able to commit a brutal, hideous crime in this country. There are many more that I could list. We've clearly too soft in this country when it comes to deporting people who've failed in their asylum claims.
Or maybe incompetent. I mean, this comes off the back, again, of... And there will come a point, by the way, when the Labour government cannot just blame the Tories. But, you know, Keir Starmer's only been in power, as you said earlier, for 50 days or so. Yes, admittedly, it's longer than Liz Truss, but that's not saying much. This comes off the back of 14 years of Conservatives in Number 10. They've had 14 years, your party, Mark, to sort out the asylum system. And it's not easy, it's difficult, but it has to be gripped. And, of course, I'm in favour of speeding up the application process, because 18 months, if you're right about 18 months, is absolutely ridiculous. Are we, though, in the modern world, in a world in which we do all agree that some people from Afghanistan, some of whom have helped us, by the way, in the war effort that we were involved in, and some people from Syria have been the victims of horrific violence in that country, that we should take some people from those countries.
But hang on, Matthew, I would say we should prioritise women and girls. I'd almost go as far as to say only. If you look at what's happening in that country.
That's your view.
You look at what's happening in that country.
That's your view, Emily. I would say that men, of course, just like women and girls, are capable of being victims of horrific regimes, and I would not.
They absolutely are. The vast majority of men
hang on, let me finish my point.
Country, while
I would
women
not
are treated
distinguish it
like animals.
I would not distinguish between men and women. What I would say is that we cannot eradicate the threat from Islamic extremism, and just as everyone watching is opposed, I hope, as opposed to Islamic extremism, of course I am, because I'm just as likely as anyone else to be a victim of it, and because it's an evil ideology. But does that mean that we should shut our borders to vulnerable people? No, it's part of being a civilised
But is this not the starkest evidence ever that people are using our asylum system to try and...
I wouldn't go quite as far as you implied or I inferred, Emily. I don't think you should turn down all male applications for asylum. But I think that when we're considering an application, the risk to public safety should be a consideration. And there is no doubt that these attacks are entirely conducted by men, not women. So I would have thought it would be easier for a woman to establish that they were not a threat to public safety than a man. I mean, that should be one of the balancing items. I think that the Labour Party claims it wants to get a grip on the administrative processes, and good luck to them. I would agree with you that the Conservatives did not do a good job there. I suspect that sooner or later, probably sooner, they're going to run up against the same legal issues that the Conservatives ran up against. With the Human Rights Act embedded in UK law, there are endless grounds for appeal. The legal profession working on this has become almost industrialised. Now, I'm not suggesting we should just have an arbitrary decision over a table. There needs to be a judicial process. But I think it now gives far too many routes for appeal, and that, as well as the administrative process, is why you've got this 18 months.
Yeah, I should just clarify, when I'm talking about women and girls, I'm thinking specifically of Afghanistan at the moment, where you have actually the largest proportion of people crossing on boats at this moment, Afghan men, and I wonder whether we should be taking women and girls as a priority, considering how they're being treated.
Let me just tell you, by the way,
Taliban. I've got to go to a break, but we'll come back.
Cooper is no soft touch, by the way.
We shall see. We shall see. The plans don't necessarily stack up as they are at the moment, but we're going to take a little quick break and then get back to this.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Recently, the cartoons that inspired the Bond films have been gifted to the Oscars archive. I'm joined now by John's son, Sean McCluskey. Very good to see you. Welcome to GB News.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any memory of your dad doing these strip cartoons?
Well, many memories, yeah. We grew up with my father working at a pace. He had to turn in one strip every day, apart from Sundays. So he was always working at the house, and always taking reference material. He had models dropping in to shoot them with his camera. You'd go out in the garden and there'd be a guy with a machine gun and he'd be taking photos of him, things like that. Nice memories.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you say about the way he characterised James Bond?
Fleming was very wary that his highbrow art was going to be somehow diminished by turning it into a strip cartoon in a newspaper, but he met with Fleming, and Fleming had a drawing made of what he wanted Bond to look like, and it was very old-fashioned, very sort of military. And my father kind of, jostled a little bit and came through with a much younger, much more lithe character. And through the first few strips, he moved Bond into a contemporary man, very much part of the 60s, and styled him in that way. And I think there's a lot of rumour that Sean Connery got the gig because he looked a lot like the drawings, because it's hard to believe now, but the strip was billboard advertised across the country.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. With me, Emily Carver. I'm standing in for Michelle. And we still have Mark Littlewood here and Matthew Stadlen. Thank you very much. We were talking about what on earth we do about this apparent situation we're in Western Europe, where you'll have a lone ISIS follower decide to just pick up a knife or enter a vehicle and try and kill as many people as possible. Now, Olaf Scholz, he has political reasons, certainly, to want to clamp down on this. I'm sure he wants to anyway. He's saying weapons laws, we need to get tougher on that, and he's also saying we need to get tougher on deportation, because the man who's suspected of stabbing all of these people was, in fact, a failed asylum seeker who was supposed to be returned to Bulgaria, but that didn't happen. So what's next? The UK should be taking note of this.
Well, of course. And, you know, I mean, you know, good luck to the Labour government in trying to resolve this. I'm not confident they will, but I hope they do. And we've got to have a much cleaner, swifter system. You are dealing with people who, you know, potentially face death or torture if they're returned to their country. You've got to take that seriously. But I think we've probably got to shift where the burden of proof lies. If you are claiming asylum, you need to come to this country and make a case. The assumption is not that your story is true. You need to establish that story. And I think that there's also probably a case, if we're listening to your claim and we haven't sped it up to my target of 18 days rather than 18 months, that we might determine that you are a threat to public safety, you're detained for that period of time, rather than, well, OK, you know, go knife shopping, go and hire a car. So I think we've got to get a lot tougher. The system needs to be fair. You cannot just have a sort of stop everybody approach, but it needs to be fast and it needs to be swift.
Yeah,
and justice delayed is justice denied.
On the Afghanistani men point, I mean, a lot of Afghanistani men helped Britain and America.
But we have
am I allowed to
for that.
Please let me finish my point.
Yeah, go on.
They helped.
Go on if you must.
They helped us at great personal risk when we were in their country trying to do what we were trying to do, you know, to put in place a democracy, always a challenging thing to do, and we failed, of course. But they were incredibly brave, some of those people. In fact, I was down the Portobello Road not long ago. I bought the case for this mobile phone from someone who had come from Afghanistan. And the message that it sends out to so many people watching, if they are watching from those sorts of backgrounds, is so offensive. Because let's remember, yes, one of these attacks is one too many, but the overwhelming majority of people who come from these countries are law-abiding.
No one's trying to paint everyone with the same brush.
The fact that you, let's say, fought against the Taliban, possibly alongside the Brits and the Americans, that should be listened to, and that is evidence that should be adduced at your hearing. So if you're able to say, look, this is what I thought...
Pushing back on what Emily said, it started off by saying we shouldn't have men from Afghanistan and Syria.
Hang on, I said we should prioritise women and girls.
You came to say that. No, you came to say that.
Matthew,
but first of all, no, Emily, that's what you came to say. First, you shouldn't have men and women.
That's where you I said we should prioritise women and girls. At the moment, it's whoever gets here first. At the moment, it is whoever gets here first. I think that is
But
wrong.
those who can
particularly
show
when you
that
have undocumented people and you don't know if they're a security
Not what you started
risk.
off by saying.
That is
It's what you
something
said.
that
It
is
seems to me that those who can establish that they fought alongside the Allies to try and establish democracy against the Taliban, you know, I mean, you can't just assert it. You need to show. You need to show
And
that.
gay men, for example, not just people who fought.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather forecast for GB News from the Met Office. Northwest, southeast split developing with our weather. Wet and windy weather pushing in from the Atlantic across the north and the west, but turning quite warm as high pressure holds on across southeastern parts of the UK.